Let's roll.
Let's roll. So, welcome along to Sega Does episode 44. We got to the 44s. Finally. Joining me this week, virtually to my left, we have, as always, in the 100 plus degree heat of Arizona, we have the Dylan D. How we doing, Dylan?
I'm staying nice and cool because we have air conditioning because we're not animals.
No.
Yes. No, it's spicy out here, but I hear it's been a little spicy in the UK too,
It's
buddy.
pretty warm. Yeah. I'm Sam the Pixel Dude, as always, here with Dylan, and we're both absolutely it's pouring out of us. I mean, Dylan's obviously used to it because he lives in a desert, but it's pretty warm here. So, what better thing to do on a record-breaking heat day than to bunker yourself down in a small room and talk about video games in front of a hot monitor for 2 hours?
That's right.
It's perfect. Why not?
Get that nice electric glow.
Yeah. Who needs aerobics? So we better get moving because I know what makes me feel good, and that's busting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters for the Genesis. Now, obviously, famously before this game came out in 1990 on the Genesis, there is quite a famous game called Ghostbusters for pretty much everything else, which we have talked about the Master System version before, and obviously Dylan, being the NS encyclopedia that he is, has talked about the Nintendo version. But if we recall, Dylan, the previous version of Ghostbusters was a little bit naff.
Yes, I mean that's being very polite, actually.
Yes.
I mean it's just a garbage game that sold super well because it was Ghostbusters and people wanted. It was the 80s. I mean, anything Ghostbusters sold really well. Yeah. So the Master System version was one of the better versions.
It wasn't
in compared to the computer or NES versions, but still terrible, still not the true Ghostbusting experience. However, this Genesis version, I'd say, takes us one step closer to authenticity, so to speak, the authentic Ghostbusters experience. What did you think of this one, Sam?
Yeah, now I'd heard about this game before, but I'd never actually played it for a few weeks ago when I sat down to play this game. And this is known as, that's the one with the big heads. I think that's what it's kind of known as. Now, I like the way they did that because obviously by 1990, I mean, Ghostbusters was just like a cultural milestone for anyone who lived through the 80s, and the characters were so iconic. You could look at them. I mean, most people who saw a picture of Dan Aykroyd wouldn't go, "Oh, look, there's Dan Aykroyd." They go, "Oh, look, there's the guy from Ghostbusters."
Yep.
It was. I mean, even with the fame that they got to, all of the stars in the film, actually, none of them had terrible careers after. They all had fantastic careers. It took Bill Murray, I would say, a good 20 years to get away from, "Oh, look, that's the guy from Ghostbusters."
Right.
But
he had to star in a few Wes Anderson movies to become everyone's hipster uncle. Yeah, and then that's what he was known for, pretty much. But
Wes Anderson, who has 4 shots in a movie and recycles them. But anyway, we'll talk about that another day. Cheap. Right. So, as I was saying, iconic, obviously. That as the characters are, they portrayed them in this game with rather large heads, kind of like there was in the 90s, especially early 90s, there was a thing about characters with big heads. I'm thinking Beavis and Butthead, and a lot of caricatures, like the Hot Rod caricatures. there's like a big head thing going on. I don't know why. Pogs, they had big heads on them as well.
GoldenEye 007, DK mode, you know.
Yeah, big head mode. Was, NBA Jam, did that?
Yeah, NBA Jam. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. But anyway, what that allows you to do is have different characters and actually be able to see the differences in them, and they're quite expressive. And that also gives the game a level of detail that the previous Ghostbusters game did not have. I mean, they were just like nondescript silhouettes of people in jumpsuits walking across the screen, whereas now, you know, Peter Venkman, he sweats, he smiles, he gasps, he gets set on fire, he turns into a mummy, he gets frozen, you know, he gets blown up, he does all kinds of things.
Right.
And the reason I'm talking about the characters so much is the control in this game. I'm not going to say it's like perfect, but if you pick a game up and want to control a game as expected, this is kind of like pretty much par for the course. It controls exactly how you expect it to. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, and the gameplay again is more in keeping with what you would expect a Ghostbusters game to to have. So basically, you choose Ray, Peter, or Egon. I don't know why the game developers shaft Winston, because I kind of feel like
I think he wouldn't, because he wasn't in the previous ones either, if I remember rightly.
No, he wasn't.
I think he's just a bit of a stickler about people using his license, likeness in the license, and maybe for like the Ghostbusters franchise, he didn't sign his face up as a likeness for them to use. I mean, obviously you can't go back now and look at promotional material. It'd be very interesting to see if all four of them were in all of them, but it's got to be something about him not letting them use his likeness in Ghostbusters ancillary properties, because he's not in any of them.
I know. And the weird thing is he's kind of spent the last 10 to 15 years like going to cons and be like, hey, I'm the guy in Ghostbusters, and everybody loves Ernie Hudson. I mean, he's great, but it's just weird, because you're right. It's like he's just not very prevalent, and in these early, promotional things. But the game, okay, so you choose Ray, Peter, Egon. You got your Buster. Initially you only have like kind of whatever a normal Ghostbuster unit would be, but then like you earn money from trapping and destroying ghosts, so you're able to like purchase better things and just purchase better weapons and take care of the tougher ghosts. What I like about this game is the personality. It feels like a Ghostbusters. It's goofy. It's a little, I wouldn't say it's scary, but there are set pieces, like when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is like attacking the building you're in, and like all of a sudden his fist bursts through the wall, and you're like, ah, crap. It's like, I mean, there's some really good moments in here. So it's not just that the game plays like you think a Ghostbusters game would expect. They also nailed, I would say, the mood, the feel of the movie, as best as a Genesis game, could do.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on the previous game, it was so complicated for the hardware it was trying to be on. I mean, it wanted you to, run a business, basically. You had to account for fuel and wastage and traveling to and from places, and there were all these mini games in between, whereas there is a little bit of that with this. Like you said, you find money in stages and you can upgrade your equipment and stuff like that, but it really dials back that management aspect to Ghostbusters, and just lets you mainly jump around the level, shoot nondescript ghosts.
Yep.
And then eventually you'll get to a stage where there's a boss, and the bosses I really did enjoy, actually. They were unique.
Yeah.
They were all very expressive. Not really many, obviously, because there wasn't that many in the movie. There isn't much from the movie in terms of bosses. I mean, obviously there's the Marshmallow Man and a few other little bits. There's a Slimer here and there and stuff like that. And then at the end, you actually get to catch ghosts, and the catching the ghost thing actually makes sense in this game. Hooray. And it was just a really well crafted, all round great game.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see this in another game that we're going to talk about today. But
okay.
I feel like timing for these games, like Sega just didn't have the best timing. I know Ghostbusters was an iconic property even in 1990. I think the second movie came out in 89. It wasn't as popular as the first, but it still did pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
So, releasing a game a year later, back when the world moved slower, wasn't a big deal. But I feel like this game could have sold people a few Genesis, at least a few Genesis. And I was too young. I was about 5 years old, but I wonder if there just was no advertising for it, or what was the deal? I just feel like this game, and again, another game that we're going to get to later, before Sonic, really could have sold the Genesis to some folks.
Yeah, because like you say, this had, when was the original Ghostbusters? Was that 83?
84, yeah.
84. So it's got like 6 years of zeitgeist behind it. And the bigger thing for me, actually, is that it's not actually called Ghostbusters 2.
Right. Now, why I like that too, but why do you like that?
It's just like we're going to try again, sort of. It's like, it really does seem like that. I kind of hope this. I haven't looked ahead in the list, but from memory, and I have a little bit of history looking at game history, I don't think there is a Ghostbusters 2 that takes this formula and expands on it. So, no. I'd like to think that they were trying to make like a platform for sequels, but that never happened either. It would make sense to me if like this came out and then a year later Ghostbusters 2 came out, same mechanics, but levels based on Ghostbusters 2. Maybe
right.
to tie in with a VHS release or something like that, or a European release of the film in the cinemas and stuff like that. Because remember, back in the day, European cinema releases were a long time after US releases.
That's so weird. I guess I get it. It's not like today where you just email someone a film, or put it on a flash drive or whatever. But still, yeah. Shipping off all those film containers, I guess, took a long time. Yeah.
We need to have a look at some comments here, Dylan.
Yeah, okay.
We
Go
do.
for it.
Right, what we got here? Flux Core. Yeah, you know who you are. Weird, they found it necessary to rotate the logo slightly for the cover of the US release. Let me go have a look. You can do this as well with me at segadoes.com. Yeah? Yeah, they did. Wow. You have good eyes. Flux, well done. It still overlaps the border, so squaring things up with a 5-pixel rotation just seems ridiculous. Oh, we even measured it. Well done. Absolutely agree with the preference for the clean cover aesthetic. Yeah, cover art's starting to get good. It's going to get real good soon. It's going to kind of peak with Sonic, and then we'll see. Then we've got very fun review to read. A couple of quips had me chuckling. It was a very good review. I did read it many years ago.
Thank you.
Who else we got in here? Let's try and find some new. Paolo Tavez. Thanks, great article. I was not aware of this hidden gem. And not a lot of people are, actually. And I love the Ghostbusters at the time. You got me curious with your tweet the other day about the game. I am happy that a review delivered. We'll look into it. Well, that's what we're here for, Paolo, to look into things. Taylor, I absolutely love this game. It was one of the few I had growing up as a kid, and it was an absolute blast to play. Yeah, this, like back in the day, it was a pretty good looker as well as being smooth and interesting. I think definitely if I'd had this back then, it would have been for sure one of my favourites, for sure.
Yeah, these 1990 Genesis games, not all of them are winners, but we're starting to get into some like really heavy hitters, and like to the point where it's like, okay, Nintendo had to have known, like, we got to get the Super Famicom out because they're starting to, Sega's starting to do some laps, even though they weren't selling as much as they eventually would.
Yeah.
But just what they were producing was starting to be a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned heavy hitters there, Dylan. Now, this next game won't go away. And
even if we want it to.
It was as true back in the 90s as it was in the 2000s, as it was in the 2010s, as it is in the 2020s. Some may call it a heavy hitter. I just call it kitty litter. This is
nice.
Columns.
Yes, Columns. My wife is just outstanding at this game.
Really?
Really. I've seen her get to, man, I don't know, some insane level.
Really?
I think it was level 100 plus. Yeah.
I don't know why they call it Columns. It should be called Bugger. We forgot to get Tetris. And is what it should be called. That's what I believe anyway. Yeah, this is basically Sega's attempt to make a puzzle game on the back of the success of Tetris on the Game Boy and many other puzzle games that were popping up around this time. I don't really want to talk much about this because you kind of know what it is. I'm more intrigued to see if Dylan had much experience with this through the years. What do we think, Dylan?
No, I did not.
Good man.
So when I got the Genesis as a kid, I was not into puzzle games. Everybody loved Tetris. I love Tetris, but I wasn't into these sort of falling block like ripoffs. And
no.
And I could tell Columns was exactly that. I do want to mention though, people think Sega created Columns, but they actually just bought the license from a man named Jeff Geertsen, who created it for, I don't even know what this is, the X Windows system. I don't know if it's based on Microsoft Windows. I don't know what that is.
Sounds cool.
But sounds nice. X Windows.
X Windows.
But anyway, so he ported it to, I think he did, or maybe other programmers ported it to different computer systems of the day, but somewhere around the time when Sega was trying and failing to put the Tetris on the Genesis, they swooped in and bought the license.
Right.
So once they got Columns, man, they pumped it out on anything they could. Arcade, Genesis, Master System, and of course the Game Gear.
It's not just that though, Dylan. It was on every Sega compilation for so many years.
Yes.
Sega CD compilations, Saturn compilations, phone compilations.
Oh yeah.
It's like it won't go away. That's all I ever. My biggest touch point with Columns in my gaming history is buying the many various Sega collections, which I'm sure me and you have bought through the years, turning the box over, looking and going, oh, yeah, this bugger's got Columns on it as well, and then putting it. It's like, what?
Columns?
Why?
You can bet that Columns will be on those, and for some reason, Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, which is not only the worst Alex Kidd game, it's just a bad game that I'm surprised Sega wants anyone to play still. But yeah, Columns, it's
everywhere. It's
everywhere. It's exactly what you think it is. It's a falling block puzzle game. You instead of tetrad shapes, you put it's colored gems, and you align 3 colors with each other. They disappear, bam, and then the levels get faster, and you get a high score. And there you go. And that's it. There's nothing to it, and to me, it makes sense on something like the Game Gear. It does not make sense on the... I mean, I guess it makes sense on the Genesis. It was an arcade port, but I don't know, man. Sega really likes this game, and I just don't get it. I've never gotten it, and I think we should stop talking about it now.
Yes, we should. There are 20 comments on Columns, but because it's Columns, tough.
Right.
No. Okay, right. What we got here then? Taylor says, I started off as a Tetris guy. Okay. But I have to admit, I probably like columns now more. Okay, next comment. Flux, while I do own a copy of columns on a Game Gear, it's because it's synonymous with the system. Yeah, see, I never really had like friends with Game Gears and stuff, but apparently Game Gear, like, I don't know if it was a pack-in. Do you know if it was a pack-in with Game Gears?
I'm sure at some point it was before
Yes.
Sonic, because I know Sonic, once that came out, that was the pack-in. But
It probably was.
yeah, I'm sure it was.
I'm sure it was. GH,
Without doing any research, I'm sure it was.
I remember seeing it on the box. I agree with your review. This is from GH. Columns is an average game that is easy to port and repackage, so Sega will reissue it every generation. And he hasn't put this, but I will say until the end of time. We got Milbury 88J. It says masterpiece! ! Columns greater than Tetris. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess people do like it. I guess I haven't.
They do.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't believe you can become a columns grandmaster though.
Nor should you.
Yeah.
Nor should you.
No.
You know what game should be on every Sega compilation and isn't on any of them?
Oh no.
Is our next game.
Oh no.
eSWAT. City Under
eSWAT.
Siege.
Oh dear. So I'm taking you like this.
I did like it quite a bit.
Oh dear.
I remember you sent me a picture of when you were playing it, and I didn't know if that meant that you enjoyed it, because you didn't say, but you were just like, hey, I'm playing eSWAT now. And I thought that was interesting. And then I never heard from you on like whether you liked it. So
Yeah.
So okay, Sam, what is eSWAT and why do you not like it?
Okay. eSWAT is a side-scrolling shooter platformer. A la like Contra and so on and so on. It's a bit slower, but it's a bit more maze-like. It's not straight left to right. You have to do a bit of exploration, stuff like that. But now, help me out here, Dylan. Mm-hmm. When is it set? Because I'm getting Demolition Man / Escape from New York vibes. When is it set?
I don't know if they actually say. I think it's definitely like.
Is it like a 20XX sort of thing?
Yeah, it's got this sort of like futuristic, but still kind of realistic. You know, it's not too distant future.
Like a Demolition Man sort of. Like, this is
right.
Like 50 years in the future.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't like this. Yeah, I thought it was very stiff, very slow. Not much in terms of ways of like you can take on enemies. I didn't feel like. I thought it was very much a, well, I hope this hits them sort of thing. Yeah, I thought it was stiff as a plank of wood. I didn't like it. I mean, it's slow. You have to admit, it's slow.
It's slower. Yeah, it's slow. It's slower than like Shinobi, and Shinobi's pretty slow. Already.
Now, see, I'm looking at screenshots here, and I'm seeing a mech suit.
Oh, did you not get that? Did you not get that far?
No.
Okay, so one reason why I like this game is like you have to earn the mech suit, kinda. So you
There's a problem.
You start off as just a regular cop, and for the first 2 levels, and then you get a mech suit by level 3. And then after that, you were just beefed to the nines. And of course, but the game gets a lot harder. And yeah, but
So
the
it's
mech suit
RoboCop.
is kind of,
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it's RoboCop. And then if you look at the Japanese box art, I think there's some RoboCop Mega Man hybrid vibes going on.
Oh wow! Yeah, visit SegaDoes.com, people. Check out this Japan. No, SegaDoes.com, if anything, is a great Sega box art resource. It's I enjoy looking at box arts, and perfectly described screenshots are what SegaDoes.com kind of does best. The writing, yeah, it's okay, but
thanks. The writing, which takes the longest.
Yeah. People just like the pretty pictures, don't they?
The writing.
It's
true.
The writing is very good. But, yeah, I mean, it looks the part. I mean, if you saw this on the shelf in 1990, you'd think, that's exactly what I want. I mean, it's right on brand.
It is on brand, and I mean, it's keeping in line with kind of Sega's action platformers of the time.
Yes.
You know, it feels like that. Once you're in your mech suit, you're able to get different, kinds of weapons, and you have little jetpack thrusters. So I think you can jump, but then you also have an extended kind of double jump-ish thing with the thrusters, but they're limited time.
Okay.
But the game is incredibly hard. I mean, it is.
Yeah, it is
rock freaking hard. So I didn't beat it. I got pretty darn far,
right.
But I mean, they just throw everything at you. Mm-hmm. And what I find interesting, and also about this time of just game development in general, is there are certain games that, not just Sega, but other developers too, it's like, okay, we're making this arcade game, because eSWAT was an arcade game. And it's actually, in my opinion, a lot more boring than the Genesis version. Right. But it's very different. Like, it's very different. And then they made a Master System version, and that's completely different from the Genesis and arcade versions. And though the Master System version was different enough that I gave it its own review. Like, I don't even know when that was, but
obviously it came out later. Otherwise, we'd have got
it was either later or even earlier. I can't remember,
remember. It was a while ago.
But developers did that. Like,
yeah,
Double Dragon for the Master System is different than Double Dragon for the NES, which is different than Double Dragon from the arcade. Like, yeah, they're the same kind of game in principle, but they tweak it. They used to tweak. Developers used to tweak games based on their systems, and I just find that stuff fascinating. And it makes exploring these back catalogs, if you will, a lot more interesting. But I'm sorry you didn't like eSWAT.
No.
Yeah, because it's definitely one of my favorites.
I'm just looking through the comments. Sut has kind of summed it up perfectly for me. It says, I've only played this a couple of times, and to be honest, wrote it off as a poor man shinobi. That's how I feel about it.
It's RoboCop by way of Shinobi. I mean,
it's pretty.
It is pretty.
It's just not, for me, it doesn't feel very playable. We've got Old School Player. It's an old school name. Never played the Genesis version, but I never cared for the arcade eSWAT. Completely unoriginal. I think Sega was just trying to capitalise a copy that's a success of Data East's RoboCop. Yep. I mean, back in the day, a property would come out, say, like Aliens, and then for the next 3 or 4 years, you would have shameless copies of certain, games, movies, and TV shows, comics. It's just like, I mean, you don't get it as much now, but a single movie could set a trend back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, man. And it would just get blown out of the water. Who we got here? Sean. Let's have a bit of Sean action, shall we? I never brought this, but did beat it on rental when it came out. Rented games. I said this before, but at the time I was kind of disappointed at this game because it wasn't like the arcade version. Yeah, but again, like you said, Dylan, that was a lot of the fun back then. I remember grabbing games and going, "Oh, this isn't like the arcade version." Actually, that's kind of what I wanted. We've got ROM here. I think my Master System 2 box had a screenshot of this version of the game on the back. Aha, I've heard of this before. A stunt they also put, yes, with Castle of Illusion. I actually liked Castle better on the Master System than the Mega Drive. But this, I was disappointed. Yes, that is a famous one where they put the Genesis screenshots on the back.
Shameless. Yeah. Shameless.
Yes. Oh, 90s advertising. 90s advertising. Right. Now then, we've hit a game now that I couldn't play because the way I was playing it wouldn't let me.
You didn't miss much.
I don't think I did. And like your tagline says, it was all a bit Greek to me. And this is... how'd you say this?
Phelios? Something like that.
Yeah. So this is a space shooter, but on a horse.
Correct. You are the Greek god Apollo, and you are riding Pegasus, and you are fighting mythological things.
Great.
It's a nice change of pace visually from, the Genesis was just bombarded with shoot 'em ups of the same thing over and over again. There was very little variety. So this is, at the time, I would imagine if you were into the Genesis and you liked shoot 'em ups, this would have been a nice and refreshing change of pace, except for the fact that it's hard as balls. And the reason it's hard as balls is because your sprite is so big
I can see that.
And you just absorb all the bullets, all the things.
He's got wings.
He's got wings.
It's literally nearly. Let's have a look here. It's about the actual, because it's got the Sega bars come back down the right hand side. It is about a quarter of the actual playfield is filled up by your sprite.
Wow.
Yeah, I've just measured it. It's about a quarter. That's crazy.
That's insane. The other reason why this game is hard is because to even defeat normal enemies, you have to charge your sword icon that you see on the right hand side.
And the bar,
you have to charge it and then release it. But charging, probably just takes a second or two. But in a shoot 'em up, where things are constantly coming at you, is too long. Yeah. And so I tried my best to play through as much of this as possible because I did like the kind of mythological Greek backgrounds, but it just wasn't enjoyable. I just did not like it. And I thought for charging should be one of those things that you do for like boss battles or like the occasional enemy, but like the fact that you have to do it really just makes the game not enjoyable at all. So
let's have a look. There are some comments, believe it or not, on this Greek-based space shooter. I never thought I'd say that sentence. Taylor, I gotta agree, it's not a great game, but the theme really makes it stand out from the dual cookie-cutter space shooter. My God, though, it's almost as if you make sense. Rom says, slightly disturbing hentai aside. Yeah, there is a little bit of that in this. This looks a lot like many of the retro pixelated 8-bit style indie games of the last decade. No, I won't go that far.
Definitely don't agree with that one.
No,
Sorry,
I don't
buddy.
agree with that one. And then we've got... I thought we already had Rom. Oh, we've got Rom again. Why not? I finally tried this on the weekend, and yes, the need to charge your weapon, even for regular enemies, really takes a toll of enjoyment out of this game. It's amazing something like that doesn't get worked out in testing. It makes me wonder if there was much.
I mean, was there much testing of, really any game back then? I mean, obviously there was, but like, my thing with shooters especially is like the people making the game probably play it so much that it might not even be that challenging for them.
That happens in game development,
I imagine. So so it's like they can't be objective really.
No.
But I mean that now that's why there's outside testing and stuff. But not back then.
No. Well, that brings us to the end for today, Dylan. I mean, we've had our trips in space, but actually we've enjoyed some good old 90s just nostalgia with the old Ghostbusters, and next time we've got even more 80s/90s greatness. So until then, Godspeed, sir, and we'll see you next time. Sega.